Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Your Next 50. This is the podcast where we tell you that it's your time, that you can be intentional with your choices, and to not waste even one more day hiding in your stories. Because Sylvia and I know that you can reclaim your personal power and be happy while doing it. And this podcast will show you how. I'm Jenny.
I'm Sylvia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Jenny and I, pre-show, we were chatting, and what came up is, what the hell? Who put this on the list today, my friends? We're
Yeah.
shining a light on two emotions that might be difficult
Yeah.
to discuss today.
So let's just ponder here. Who are the kinds of listeners that click on an episode called Shining a Light on Guilt and Shame, Sylvia?
Brene Brown I'm going to send this to her.
We
I'm going to
should.
send this to her because this is what she's made her,
Yeah.
these last years of her lives, her
Yeah.
career, all about delving into
Yeah.
vulnerability and all the emotions. In her latest book, give a shout out to Brene. I don't know if you've read it, The Atlas of the Heart,
Yeah.
and talks about all the different types of emotions. And I don't know when we decided to put this on the list if we were delving into her book, Jenny, but here we are. We said
Well,
we're going to go forward anyway
yep.
because it is when we do not talk about the hard things in our lives that they just perpetuate.
Yeah. And we had a conversation about how guilt, I kind of get. I was like, well, we always tell stories on the podcast. So let's tell stories about guilt. I'm like, yes, all in. And then we moved to shame. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I want to tell any of those stories because shame continues what Brene talks about is shame exists in the closet, hidden away. There's such a mortification and
Mm,
embarrassment about it. And though because it stays hidden and it doesn't get any light, shame grows.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I have some definitions that I'm going to
Yeah.
quickly read just to set us here because Brene talks a lot about connection. I think we've talked about that before.
Mhm.
Connection, along with love and belonging, is why we are here. It is what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. Shame is the fear of disconnection.
Oof.
It's the fear that something we've done or failed to do, an ideal that we've not lived up to, or a goal that we've not accomplished makes us unworthy of connection. I'm
Mm.
unlovable and I don't belong. And like you said, it thrives in secrecy, in silence and judgment. But I turn the page, and you know what it says here? The antidote to shame is empathy.
Wow.
And we had a guest,
Yeah.
Anita Novak, come
Novak.
in and talk about empathy. And that's a
Mhm.
great episode, I think, to follow if you're, once you get through this episode and want the antidote, well, you go listen to that one because empathy, in Anita's words, cures
Mhm.
all. Guilt, on the other hand, Jenny, it says it's an emotion that we experience when we fall short of our own expectations or standards.
To
And I
which
liked your comment. What did you say?
I was like, oh, I must feel guilty all the time because my standards are really high.
And then I said, well, I guess my expectations are really low because I don't feel guilty a lot of the time. Sometimes, but anyway. And they were like, oh, and Canadians, well,
Yeah.
we always feel guilty because we're always apologizing. So if you're
Yeah.
listening to us from the States, you know that Canadians
Yeah. I'm
are first.
sorry. Oh,
I'm
sorry. You go
sorry. I'm so
first.
sorry. I'm
You go
sorry. I'm
first.
sorry.
So just to pick up on that before you do the definition of
Yeah.
shame. So guilt is, I did a bad thing.
Hmm.
And the one of the antidotes is also apologizing and acknowledging and wanting to right it. That's a part of
Right.
guilt. But shame is a
Yes.
little different, right?
Well, shame, yes, she said it's the hiding, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And examples of shame, like what we
Mhm.
like they're it's heavy. It's heavy. It is hiding the fact that I'm in recovery, raging at my kids, right? We don't talk
Right.
about that. Bankruptcy,
Wow.
getting laid off from work and having to tell your spouse, your boss calling you an idiot in front of a client or other coworkers.
Yeah.
That brought up some things for me there.
Yeah.
Shame is not making partner in your firm, right?
Mhm.
asking your partner asking you for a divorce because you don't want to have children, or she doesn't want to have children with you. DUIs, infertility,
That
that
one.
was a big one.
So the theme
Mm,
there to me is there's something wrong with you,
yeah,
right? And there's
yeah,
a mortification that there's something so terribly wrong with you that if you told someone, you would no longer belong. You would be
yeah, that
disconnecting.
disconnection. I really like that how
Yeah,
Brene puts
yeah,
that, because if you know what I'm thinking just of children, right?
yeah,
Their parents might be fighting and end up getting divorced, and then they feel disconnected and
yeah,
feeling that shame about that and bringing it on. I must not be loved,
yeah.
right?
Because
So
my
we talk a
parents
lot about things happening to our to us in
are
our
inner
our
child.
childhood,
Yeah.
right? But these feelings, woof, I'm
So
getting goosebumps,
I
Jenny.
know. So I just want to, I always feel like I need to add into the conversation the one about the divorce situation. The thing to remember, and I'm pulling on all my years of therapy and whatnot, is you can create attachments at any age. Just because the attachment wasn't there as a young person, you can absolutely go back and reattach yourself, reconnect yourself with your inner child. And so, as we're going through these conversations about guilt and shame, if things are coming up, remind yourself that there really is hope for this. Just a aside, my work as an executive coach, I think that we in the boardroom are not quite yet ready for the acknowledgement that we are perpetuating our inner stories in the power dynamics happening around our board corporate tables. And unless we address it through those root causes, those beliefs, those inner children, those feelings of safety, it's never going to change. It's going to go
No.
on and on and on. So that self-awareness piece, I do think leadership starts with us. It starts with our owning our own stories. And so if this episode brings up guilt and shame, brings up emotions, maybe the invitation is to sit, to take a look, to talk to someone, because like we said, the shame part is the hiding of it,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right?
We're breaking down the show into 3 parts, and I think, you might resonate with 1, 2, or 3. I think, we have stories in each of them, but,
Mhm.
in motherhood, uh,
So much shame.
so much shame there. Money, one of our favorite topics, lots of shame there,
Mhm,
and body issues.
mhm.
Our demographic is women, and as a visibility coach, I see
Yeah,
this pop up all the time, people not wanting to be visible, and
yeah,
we have so much work to do, and the work
yeah.
I've done in my own self went back to that inner child or that inner
Mhm,
teenager, even that
mhm.
woman who was 30 years old and that tired mom. I had to go back and tell her
Yeah,
she looked, and beautiful, and that there's
yeah,
no shame in having more
yeah,
gray hair and wrinkles now, but
yeah. So I'm gonna go backwards. Let's talk about the body one
yeah.
first.
Yeah, do
Um,
it.
the shame. So, if you've been following along, I've been on Instagram a lot more lately, and
Mhm.
I just wanna own every freaking time I press post, it's never good enough, right? Like I push post even though it didn't meet exactly my perfect high standard expectations for that particular reel, that particular story. But what I am leaning into is it's it's okay for now. And I think about all my wrinkles and I think about all those things, but they don't hold me back. And I just wanted to say that out loud because a lot of people have been saying to me, "Wow, Jenny, I see you everywhere. You're really working on your presence and it must be
Mhm.
so easy for you." And I just want people to know it is a practice muscle. It is a muscle I am exercising and I am releasing myself of that expectation of it being perfect. So there's no shame.
Yeah, and it's that looking in that lens, right? And we're looking at it with different filters than other people are
Mm,
looking at it. And we look at you, Jenny, and going online, and I think I go online as well, and we see every little line, every little
mhm.
hair out of place, every little word that we say, and we're very critical.
Yeah.
And like, I love that you're stepping into that and not allowing
Mhm,
that to stop you from pressing post, because if one person can hear
mhm.
that message, you've done your job,
That's
right?
it.
And they're not focusing on the physique. They are not focusing on what you're wearing or how your hair is. It is how you're making them feel.
Well, the message, right?
And the
The
message,
message.
yes, yeah, through, how they're feeling through, they feel understood, they
Yeah,
feel heard, they
yeah,
feel that you've got them, that you've got their backs.
yeah.
Mm.
Oh, I hope. I sure hope. That's my hope. I'm thinking about younger folks. I watch my teenage daughter scrolling
Oh
through
my
these
gosh.
body image things on Facebook and on Instagram and whatnot, and it worries me a lot. These expectations of what our bodies are supposed to look like. One of the things that I do around my own body is I pick one part of my body that I love. I can't love all of it. Maybe there's some parts I'm less happy about, but as long as you have one part that you just really love, like I love my arm, say it out loud, right? Find something that you think is great about your body. And to minimize that sort of scrolling and not feeling good enough, and really can put you back in the closet with your body image.
There's really a correlation to the time we're online.
Yeah.
Recently, I found myself scrolling a little bit
Yeah.
more and then feeling
Yeah.
that comparisonitis.
Yeah.
And I was getting in a really down. And I think it was my
Yeah.
husband's like, oh, you're just online too much. Get
Mhm.
offline. And I'm like, you're right. I have been and comparing myself to this coach and that coach. And then
Yeah.
those feelings of shame coming
Yeah.
up because I am not necessarily the physique, but what they're doing. Oh,
Doing.
what they're putting out new programs. They're much
Mhm.
better than I am. It looks
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
great. Their
Mhm.
lives look so amazing. Look at them, right?
Curated, so professional. Wow, they're so eloquent, right?
Yes, they've got it all. And then those feelings come up. So social media, you're right with the kids. My daughter, I think last year she was 9. She told me that a friend of hers was on a diet. And
Oh
I'm
my
like, oh my Lord.
yeah,
It
yeah.
really, we have a long way to go. Um, I have grown up with a parent who had her own issues. My mom
Mhm.
had her own, body issues, and
Yeah.
it's at one point I think I was also in my 20s. I think
Mhm.
going through that as well. I had to just. I made a conscious decision at one
Mhm.
point. I remember
Mhm.
that no, I do not want to have
Mhm.
that. And
Mhm.
and now as I get older, I've moved it to strength. I
Yeah.
like it's not about there's still people talking online about losing weight all the time. And I said, why? I said this yesterday morning. Why are we still talking? Why is this still a narrative that we need to lose weight? Let's just be healthy and be strong. And another story is that we were at a birthday party a couple weeks ago, and my sister-in-law, she was like, oh, I'm going to be 50 in 3
Mm.
years. Oh my God, I don't want to be 50. And then, and then my husband turned to his sister and he says, well, a lot of people don't even get to be 50.
Oh,
And then pause and, just that silence. And we're like, and she goes, yeah, I'm going to reframe that. I can't wait.
yeah,
Like I am
yeah,
strong. She did have health issues and lost
yeah,
some weight and is much
yeah.
healthier now, is running.
Strong. Yeah,
Anyway,
absolutely.
reframing. Yeah.
Yeah, so the body part, the body shaming, the body shame, I imagine that's a lot of what the next generation, and I'm certainly not an expert in transgender and all those things, but helping people
Mm.
feel comfortable in their bodies so they're not shameful of their bodies.
It's very difficult though when you look at what's happening in places in certain parts of the world where they're not even allowing people to be themselves,
Right.
however,
Yeah.
right? So if it's coming from up above and you can't even be in a
Mm,
province or a state that allows you to be
mhm.
yourself,
Right, right.
thinking about
Florida. Yeah,
Florida,
yeah.
yeah, how difficult must that be?
Oh gosh, and to yeah, I mean, I don't my theory way back when, what my theory about people that chose to live their lives as or that live their lives as homosexuals or whatever the current term is gosh, life's got to be hard enough for them as it is. Why would I in any way want to make life harder for those people? Like the courage it must, and we're talking 20 years ago, the courage it must have taken for them to say that. Who am I to judge them for how they live? I think
Mm,
that's an incredibly brave thing. And I can now see in this conversation about guilt and shame that the coming out part I'm now realizing is putting it into the light, letting it be part of
mm,
you, be heard. I know a lot of folks that have worked with eating disorders as well. Part of the healing process is accepting that you have the eating disorder because
right.
there's so much shame attached to it that it grows and festers until you can acknowledge it. Like many things,
Mm.
acknowledgement, and owning it. Yeah.
Yeah, and not being the conversation is also taking me to abortion rights
Yeah.
and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Women being told, again, the shaming of,
Yes.
if you're pregnant and don't want
Yes.
a pregnancy, and being told that you have to keep it, the baby, or not.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. I mean, we're
Yeah.
not going to go into that
No.
here, but there are lots of governing bodies
Yeah.
that are creating a whole whack of shame in this world. And like you said, life's already hard enough.
Well, and so we joke that we should start this with Bridgerton, because I'm watching Bridgerton for the first time. I'm late to the party, and the kind of shame those women have
Oh,
about, first of all, the fact that they're just eye candy and they just have to be as pretty as possible. And then if they have a brain, that's a problem. But also this shame about if they get pregnant and it's all their fault and their body has, what's the word, let them down. And I am bad. I mean, that's the message. I am bad.
I'm a
Half the
failure.
time, it's not even their fault that they're pregnant. Let's not even go to that one. So I was really struck by the contrast. I mean, our society's come a long way, obviously since Bridgerton, but yeah.
Yes, there was one scene, and it's not, I'm not telling anything, but
Yeah.
during those days, you could not be in a room by yourself with a man, and
Yeah.
if you were found, just the
Yep.
two of you chatting, or just, like, you had to marry him.
I
It's
know.
like, and the shame around that you were fully clothed, head to toe, like with long gloves on, and but the shame that those families felt.
Yeah.
I think we've just moved the shame dial to other parts of the conversation, but in our lives now. But yeah, that I
So
mean, I am enjoying that show, Jenny. I am
okay,
enjoying the show, but I
I am
wouldn't
too.
want to be a woman in those days. Not at
I
all.
would like the clothing budget though. Can I
Yeah.
just talk about that? I just love, love, love the clothes. I love the colors. I love everything about that. That's another show. So
Yeah.
body. Okay, let's talk about money. Let's do it. So much
Let's do it.
shame,
So
debt,
much shame.
right? People that holding debt, people that feeling like they're not earning enough, people feeling like they're not contributing, all those things, and the kind of, or perhaps there's shame around, your sister or your brother makes more, you can't contribute as much to the family, or can't go on the vacation, Sylvia. Like I can imagine there's a lot of shame about that. Everybody else is going to XYZ and you're not.
Yeah, and if you're a business owner, like my clients and even myself, like
Yeah.
we see what people, like we said, we're scrolling online thinking people are making all of this
Yeah.
money, and then there's shame because I'm not making
Right.
that much money, no
Yeah.
matter what level we're at.
Yeah.
That I see that all the time. The
Well,
debt again. The debt is a big one, we know a lot of students start their
yeah.
adult lives because of the structures in place with lots of debt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that, even though it was a good debt, as some would say, it's still starting and it can just perpetuate more.
Yeah. Well, and the guilt of, coming together with a partner and having to show your debt, or like, actually come clean on where your credit cards are overtaxed or whatever it is. Sidebar comment that the financial institutions, for shame, they do not make it easy to understand these things. They make financial literacy difficult. I think there is a place for a government intervention. There are a lot of people that don't have the skills to understand things like mortgages, things like credit cards, and we need to do something about that. Not today, not on this show, but shame on you, big banks,
Oh
for
yeah.
taking that money. Like, get it
And
coming and
even
going.
when we start, you start your own business,
Yeah.
we might be really good at what we do, like the
Yeah.
services we offer, but we might not have that money knowledge, like you said, which then gets people into trouble.
Yeah.
And then that shame. But here we're expecting you to wear all the hats, or expecting ourselves to wear all the hats. So my
Yeah.
piece of advice to you there, if that is your
Yeah.
case and you're starting in business or are in business, is really get the help, because there are some wonderful resources out there of people who can help us understand, like you said, because we don't understand necessarily.
Yeah. The ostrich, the shame is the ostrich. It'll go away if I stick my head in the sand, right? And the mortification of having to ask a friend, who's your accountant? how do you do your taxes? How does your family manage X, Y, and Z? Like that's why we started this whole show, was to start talking about money, bringing things into the limelight, to discuss these things so we could learn from each other. Because women have always, from the beginning of time, have learned from each other. So if there's a woman in your life that you feel has got it all together financially, or has the impression of knowing what's going on, ask her about it. Let's open up those conversations to remove the shame about not knowing. I think there's a lot of, that's a big one for me, money shame and money knowledge shame, being afraid to ask.
And there's so many, like, there's two sides of the coin, right? We've talked about that in our shows before, where you can have shame of not having enough money, but then there are people who feel shame when you do have enough money.
Yep.
And then,
Yep.
we have clients that that are in that same boat, and
Yeah.
they've had people asking them for money, and they feel guilty
Yep.
not being able to provide for, that second cousin, and
Yeah.
and then,
Yeah.
it's
You know,
it's very fascinating.
well, it makes me
So
curious, like
fascinating.
LeBron James or one of those famous basketball players, like, so they were the first generation to make a pile of money in sports. One of my curiosities is, did they all sit down as a family and say, okay, I'm going to give you this much money, or my manager is
Yeah.
going to manage your money and you're going to get an allocation? Because they're taking care of their family, but it could really feed on greed. I think there'd be a ton of guilt not sharing that money with your family when would make such a transformation. I'd love to know how they do that stuff. So if anybody out there knows, or has, like, and I'd love to have that conversation, because often money values, money stories, they're perpetuated intergenerationally. And look, we often have the same accountants as our parents, or same financial advisors, or all those good stuff. Although, so getting past that, or looking elsewhere, can also feel very shameful, that I don't want to use the same one as my dad or my mother, or
Mm.
a lot of guilt and lack of knowledge around money shame.
Mhm.
So are we going to go the number
Yeah,
3?
well, the number 3, and I've worked in this field for a long time, is the mommy guilt, mom shaming, and just the guilt of motherhood.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
you know, I have a doula agency. I should say had now, Jenny. The big news is that I am putting that leg aside,
Yeah.
but it comes up all the time,
Does it?
all the
Yeah.
time, all the time. People not feeling good enough, and that's really
Mhm.
where it comes down to, right? That feeling of guilt. I'm gonna screw my child's life
Mhm.
up if I do X,
Mhm.
Y, and Z. Oh my gosh, he fell on the floor. I ruined his life. I better run to the ER. And so many examples. But or the elders in our life make us
Yeah.
feel like,
Mm.
the comments that some of my clients share with me about
Mm.
what's told to them. I'm like, oh, we're not always very, people are not always very nice, right?
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, what's coming up for me is the overcompensating, right? So
Mm,
feeling guilty, feeling shameful, and then overcompensating, right? So the mother
yeah.
that works 24 hours a day feels guilty, so buys her daughter or son the most expensive XYZ as a compensation.
Mhm.
So that guilt assuaging time with money is one thing. I think I don't know if there's a mother on the planet that could tell you they did everything right, right?
No, no. And to
That's
whose expectations, right?
yeah, touche, touche. But the other part of that is, didn't we all do the best we could?
I think so. I do believe that.
Yeah,
I do believe that. And again, shining, I think when you talk about it,
yeah,
shining the light, those mommy groups, we have one, and the moms in there are
yeah,
constantly sharing on WhatsApp and
yeah,
in person when they can. And just to know that you're not alone feeling these
sure.
feelings, like
Yeah,
in body and money as well, and in
yeah,
anything. And that's what Brene Brown says, by just talking about it, it
mm,
dissipates the shame. It makes you feel that, wow, I'm not alone in this. I'm not the
mhm,
only one. That has
mhm.
really helped me, saying
Yeah,
I'm not the only one thinking this
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
right? I'm not
yeah,
the only one.
yeah.
And that just puts everything into perspective for me.
So that's why Brene works on vulnerability, because you have to be vulnerable to come out of the shame in the closet to say, I'm feeling this, or this is happening to me. and you have to trust your networks and your community around you, because
Mm,
the risk is disconnection and
right.
lack of belonging. And lack of belonging for a human means you don't get to eat, you don't get to hunt, your kids don't get to be fed around the communal table, right? That's the old brain wiring. So it is real. And I think the mom, we do the best we can with the tools we have at the time and space that we're given. And
Again,
there's
I
a
think
yeah,
social media hasn't
yeah.
helped us at all with these pictures, especially Instagram, of the families and the.
Mm,
I always say I don't have Christmas pajamas, Jenny. I just some people will have them. I just can't get to them.
yeah,
But so
yeah.
I feel that in certain circles where people are not
Huh.
delving down, it's
Mm,
very surface like.
mm,
So where we're going on vacation, what we're doing here.
mhm,
But once you open up, there's a crack somewhere, and I invite you to delve
mm.
into that crack, take the hand, and share what you are actually feeling.
Feeling.
What you're feeling, because the other people around you, especially in
Mm,
groups that you may not know. I mean, best friends, I think we do this. We
mhm,
do this in our group circle. We
mhm,
circle of friends. We've done this.
mhm.
We can easily go there, but
Yep.
taking that hand and just saying, "Hey, it's not going well with with my
Mhm,
kid right now.
mhm,
It's
mhm.
not. It doesn't make me a bad mom, though.
No.
It's just not going well right now, and I'm
Yeah,
looking for help and looking for
yeah.
tools."
Normalizing it, right? That sort
Mm.
of shiny, anybody who has teenagers, you know me, like the joyful four of us watching TV at night at 7 o'clock, all watching the same TV show. What? That's a thing?
Does that happen,
No,
Jenny?
I thought it was supposed to, right?
Ah,
Maybe there's something wrong
okay.
with me or the way I'm doing it. I'm joking, but
No,
I
no,
think
no.
there's
We're having a really hard time. My kids are a little
yeah,
younger than yours. We're having a
yeah.
hard time finding the Friday night show or movie to watch
Mhm.
now. It's getting everyone's got their own take on what we should be watching. Not everyone wants to, compromise, but anyway, yes, I get it.
Have
But
fun
it's
with
not
that
us.
one.
It is not us. It's
I
them.
all I care about is the tortilla dip. I don't care what movie it is. I just want the tortilla dip and maybe a glass
Ah,
of wine.
there you
Um,
go. There
to
you
let go
go.
of my guilt and shame from the week. So as we're wrapping this up, Sylvia, I guess we really just wanted to highlight these emotions. If you've clicked on this episode, it meant something to you. It's something you chose to wanted to work on or explore. Definitely would recommend Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart book.
Mhm.
And that vulnerability, having the courage to stand up or speak out or call someone and say, hey, this is a mental health moment too, right? I'm
Yeah.
not doing so great, can I have a chat?
Yeah, I'm going to finish with Brene Brown here. The four elements of shame resilience that she talks about: recognizing shame and
Mhm.
understanding its triggers. What's triggering me? Practicing critical awareness, which I think we talk about a lot, right? Doing that reality check, reaching out,
Mhm.
where very important. Are we owning and sharing our stories, right? And then speaking shame. Are you talking about how you feel? And
Wow.
that's exactly what we've talked about today.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm always struck by how often resilience is tied to connection. Resilience is
Mhm.
tied to talking to people about what's going on. That is number one. Is finding a community and a tribe or a community that understands you. And so hopefully the Your Next 50 community is one of your communities, to reach out, to connect, to send us an email, to say something mattered to you. We love to hear from our listeners. And yeah, feel free to reach out.
And if you are feeling these feelings, both Jenny and I do this work with our clients. This is part of what we see in the corporate world, in the
Yep.
fundraising world, in the business world. There are moments in everybody's life. These
Mhm.
feelings come up, and our work with you is to help you move through them,
Yeah.
these emotions. And as
Yeah.
Jenny, said at the beginning, or maybe before, was we are not our emotions. I
Hmm.
always like that one. And we're not. And having
Hmm.
these resources, super important. Jenny, we got through the show.
We did. We didn't cry.
Hats off. Didn't cry. We didn't cry. Did we not dig deep enough? Oh my
Maybe
gosh.
I hope we this was a beginner a primer, really,
Yeah.
I think, on this subject. And, we always like to bring you stuff that matters. That's meaningful conversations is what we're all
Yeah.
about. And if you have any suggestions for us for topics that you'd like to hear from us, we'd also love to hear from you. So without further ado, I think we say goodbye. We'll see you on our next episode. And thanks again for listening, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.